The NES was the very first console I ever played and owned in my life. My entire childhood was spent with it and the Game Boy, so if I'm gonna start talking about my favorite games on every console, it's only natural that I start with the NES. But I'll be excluding RPGs just to see how my top 5 favorite games list looks like. Now be aware that there might be some unusual choices here, but they are my own personal favorites. So let's begin! Number 5. Pacmania. I loved this game as a kid, and I only had it for a few months before I gave it back to one of my sister's friends. I liked it so much that I remember doing clay figures of every single Phantom color. I probably should have kept them. I played regular Pac-Man on both the NES and the arcade, so I was familiar with the game already, but this one blew me away as it had this 3D look to it and really cool area design. The fact that you could jump was awesome, as I always felt restricted in the previous Pac-Man games. I also thought the music was really well done with some catchy themes that I still remember today. There's not much to say besides that. You'll probably see it as some average Pac-Man game with a couple of irrelevant new features, but those irrelevant features are what made me love this game so much back then. Number 4. Super Mario Bros. 3. Some games of the NES era my siblings and I could never figure out, like Battletoads or Ninja Gaiden or some Castlevania games. They were just too hard for us back then. Others were very cryptic, like the Zelda games, as we didn't speak English at all. My childhood definitely went with cartridges of Mario Bros. / Duck Hunt and Super Mario Bros. 3. This is a game that no one needs to explain, as everybody has played it by this point, and as much as I beat the first one by myself, hard as we tried, my siblings and I never beat the third game. We always died at the last stages of the final area. However, every time we played this game we had a lot of fun, and I have very fond memories of it. Who didn't love all those different theme areas and the little flute to travel to them? But anyway, I know it's probably the best game in this list, but it's not my favorite. Number 3. Batman Returns. This is a beat-em-up no one ever cared or asked for. The movie spawned several games on 8-bit and 16-bit consoles. Most people are familiar with the 16-bit console versions. Because of them and their success, the NES version went severely overlooked. Not only that, critics didn't love this one because they just kept comparing it to those versions. So by the time this was released, it was automatically outdated. Well, everyone was playing the 16-bit era while I was still enjoying the 8-bit classics on the NES. This was one of those games I got in my childhood, and despite its difficulty and questionable design, I really enjoyed it. I played it dozens of times, but I only managed to beat it twice. And when you beat a really hard game on the NES when you're just a kid, you feel an euphoric sense of accomplishment. I really recommend this game, but I hope you can play it without comparing it to any other version out there. Number 2. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. Like many others, I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan back in the early 90s. Back then, everyone was already playing the Super Nintendo like I mentioned, but I was just starting to get into this great arcade port. Sure, the arcade version is highly superior to this game, but I'd say Konami did a pretty good job with this port. Like many of their games back in the day, Konami, or in this case with their other name Ultra, had really awesome soundtracks, so the music also kept me pumped enough to sustain the critical difficulty of this game. That and the popular Konami code, of course. I love the mission design and even the variety of enemies, no matter how repetitive they felt sometimes. It's the NES, so I kinda overlooked some issues like this, or the flickering for example. Every boss also had their own pattern, so you could successfully defeat them. So overall, I thought this game had a pretty neat design. Definitely one of the best beat-em-ups on the NES, and in my opinion, the best. Number 1. Sexist. I don't think it's a surprise to many that this highly obscure game is my number one. It's something I've mentioned a few times in both of my channels. Actually, this was one of the very last NES games I played before I moved on to the Super Nintendo. It's a science fiction side-scroller that has several gameplay styles. The first stage will always be a regular platformer where you'll need to find a secret door to take down a boss. By doing so, you'll unlock the next area. More platforming, but with more puzzles will be there, but always inside a base. These bases will also include small horizontal shoot-'em-up parts, where you'll need to enter into the right door to move on. The secondary stages will always be shoot-'em-up missions again, but mostly in outside areas. These can be pretty tough and hard to control as they aren't greatly designed. I still like them though. And then you'll face the boss at the top of a small moving platform. I really love every single boss fight as they all look epic, cool and interesting. The music stands out beautifully in this game even though you only have like 4 or 5 themes looping all over the place. I love Sexist and I wish more people got to know it and play it, even though I have to admit it's very hard and not really for everyone. But it's still my favorite video game on the NES. Alright guys, that's all for today. Those are my picks for today's video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, like and share the video if you haven't, and I'll see you next time.